Good afternoon. So here we are in November. Fall's finally upon us, but wanted to show you what's been happening around my neighborhood with the deciduous trees. They're losing their foliage, of course, in the sense that the trees, because of the temperature differences, are reabsorbing the nutrients from the leaves back into the tree and then shedding the leaves in preparation for its winter dormancy. So if you look at it, almost all of the trees around my neighborhoods are becoming bare and just losing their leaves, except when you come to my house though, it's actually the complete opposite. Most of the trees that I've got here, because of the cooler temperature, are actually pushing out the new flush of growth. The majority of the trees I've got here, with the exception of maybe the jujubes and the Japanese maple, everything else is evergreen. Those are only the trees that will become deciduous during winter time. So I wanted to show you what I do in preparation for the winter. But before we do that, though, let's do something crazy, and that would be to actually plant a mango tree in November. This is something that I wouldn't recommend you do unless you know what you're doing, just because from my experience, when a tree is able to make it to the first winter or second winter, they're generally fine. So I do in many ways want to winterize this mango. So here we are. I did most of the preparations already here. We're gonna go and put a mango tree here in the front yard, because I've got a space here, so why not? Yes, in the past I've been criticized for having trees just feet apart from each other, but everything seems to be doing great. So got my hole dug here already. My soil mixture here, this is my own. It's mostly just 40% peat moss, 40% just plain old sand, and 20% just potting soil. And this is the mango tree that we're going to be putting in the ground. So most of the mango trees that you're going to probably encounter likely come from Florida, and by California regulation, Florida can't ship their soil to us. So if you look at it, it's basically in wood chip. This really isn't soil. So we're gonna want to amend the hole, and just a pointer. If you know you are going to put a tree in the ground, don't water the container, because what happens is when you pull out the tree from the container, the whole thing's gonna fall apart. And in my case, I'm not taking a chance, so I went ahead and just sacrificed the container and just cut the whole thing open, so that way I can easily put everything in the ground. So here we go. I'm gonna go and just put everything in the ground, just like so, and just gently pour it out. Now, naturally, it's gonna fall apart like that, just because, again, this isn't soil. This is wood chip. But that's fine. As long as most of it is in the ground, that's fine. Go and fill it back up. I should also mention, in addition to the soil mixture that I've got in here, I've also added about half of the native dirt in here as well. So, a couple of things about putting a new tree in the ground. It's going to take the tree about 2 weeks to go through its transplant shock. So those 2 weeks are pretty critical, in that you'll want to give it the best protection possible. For example, just ensuring the water is moist, the ground is moist, and also if you're planting it in the summertime, making sure that it is somewhat shaded. That's really it. So yeah, this guy should do really well. As you can see, I've got a couple mangoes here. Coriante there, spinning around. I want to say this is going to second year now. Got a seedling kit mango here. Went to I want to say this is going to be the second winter, but doing well. So I have a high level of confidence that this tree will also do well. So this year it is forecasted to be a La Nina year, which would mean relatively dry, unfortunately, and unusually warm, which is not good for a climate, but great for tropicals. So going back to the whole idea behind preparing your trees for winter. See these fruits here? These are this is a Taiwanese guava. I'm going to be plucking out all the fruits just because with guavas, what happens is when the fruits go to winter, they don't taste good. It is very bland. So there's really no point in making a tree produce fruit, sending all of its energies to fruit and also flower production. So I'm going to be basically stripping the whole fruits and the flowers off of this tree, therefore giving the tree most of the energy, just going to basically survival mode essentially. But guavas, I mean, no problem at all. So what most trees, they come in two types. This really isn't about preparing it, but this is just kind of a an added point to winterizing your trees. But if you are going to be plucking your trees, most trees come in two types when it comes to the fruits ripening. Papayas, of course, similar to apples, bananas, those ripen on the counter just due to the ethylene that's being released and therefore making the fruits ripen on the counter. However, other fruits such as store fruits, for example, these you do not want to pluck out and leave on the counter because they are going to need the additional nutrients that the tree is still providing. So they essentially ripen on the tree as opposed to ripening on the countertop. So these you want to leave on the tree for as long as you can. And specific to store fruits, they really do fine in the winter, especially with the fruits. I mean, the fruits, unlike guavas, taste awesome come January or February. So as you can see, I mean, there's a couple of papayas that we've took down. So we're going to let these ripen on the countertop and eat them, of course. But so one of the things that I do generally in fall is I actually contact my local tree servicing companies and ask them politely for basically a truckload of wood chip. And this is what happens when you apply a generous amount of wood chip to your property. Look at this. This is all broken down wood chip combined with worm casting. I mean, this is as good as it gets for your trees. I mean, this is pure nutrients. It is like, this is, worm casting is really referred to as being black gold, but this is really it. So if you look at it, I mean, this is, if you look at the perimeter of the brick that I've got in relation to how low the neighbor's property is, I mean, it is about 8 inches above their property, and that's how fast the wood chip breaks down also. I mean, to date, I think I've got maybe 6 or 7 truckloads of wood chip, and I apply them every year, of course. And again, that's how fast these break down. I mean, this is just really, really, really good for the trees. So one pointer about applying wood chip on your property is, if you look at the perimeter of the fence, the wooden fence like mine, you're gonna wanna give it some protection. In my case, I've got the whole perimeter protected by bricks, acting as a barrier between the mulch and the fence, because fungus, as they consume the wood chip, they don't discriminate, so they will eat through your fence, which is why I've got that perimeter down. So yeah, so applying wood chip is something that I do every year. And also a couple of things too. You're gonna want to lower your water, just because now that it's very cool, there's very little evaporation that's happening. So with trees such as papayas, they have a tendency to root rot. So you're gonna want to really just, if need to, just stop your water completely, just because we're approaching the raining season. So yeah, just in my case, I just make sure that the topsoil is just moist just a bit, but beyond that, I mean, my water activity is mostly stopped. So I will now take you to the back, where I've got a couple more examples to show you on what I do to winterize some of my backyard. I mean, I'm telling you, because of the cooler temperature, the tropicals are loving it, just so that way they're putting out a bunch of new growth. But continue on what I do when it comes to winterizing. This is actually going to be the time that I apply the last granular feeding to the trees. In addition to granular feeding, specific to some of the more critical trees that require a certain level of acidity on soil, I also apply a generous amount of elemental sulfur to the trees, of course. The elemental sulfur reacts with the bacteria, therefore acidifying the soil over time, especially the milkberry. This guy really needs the soil to be crazy acidic, which is why you see a lot of elemental sulfur here. This is all elemental sulfur. This is the yellow substance here. So anyhow, that's that. And one last thing I wanted to show you. So, you know, I found a mango here the other day. Probably should take this guy out. Here you go, letting the tree rest now. So in addition to the mango, we're also gonna let the other trees rest. See, so the annona, this is an alama. The only fruit that this tree has produced, just because this is the only one that I've pollinated, is going to be ripened on the countertop. So by removing the fruit from the tree can have additional energy to make it to winter. So anyhow, yeah, that's it. There's not a whole lot of preparation, but just a couple of pointers. Cut back on your watering, for now anyway, and when it gets cold, we're talking when it gets below 30, don't water your tree at all. Unless there's a freeze happening, then yeah, you'll want to keep your tree a bit moist, so that way, I mean, a hydrated tree has a better chance of surviving against the cold than one that's struggling just a bit. So watch your watering, and in my case, I did just apply the last granular feeding, and also at the same time applied elemental sulfur in hopes of acidifying the soil further. And then of course, in my case, if need to, take out the fruits, and then, you know, the tree should then know to put most of its resources into just staying alive, including these annonas here. I mean, if you look at I want to say this is a Dr. White, yeah. Yeah, these, although it's already set, I'm gonna be just taking them out. So anyhow, yeah, that's it. All right, have a good afternoon.